Elijah Bryant liked mornings best. Before the heat climbed the back of his neck, before the cicadas woke up screaming in the trees, and before the grown folks filled the neighborhood with laughter, grills, and the slow rhythm of soul music, the world felt soft. Still, like a blank page before the first pencil stroke. He sat on the porch steps of his family's house, bare feet brushing the warm concrete. His sketchbook was open across his knees, and he studied a blue jay dancing along the edge of the fence line. He moved his pencil gently. Light strokes for feathers, a sharper line for the beak. His mother said he got his focus from her, but his dad liked to joke that Elijah was just quiet on the outside because his mind was too loud. Fair Hollow was the kind of neighborhood where you could still borrow sugar from next door, though sometimes folks didn't return the cup. The houses were close, a little worn down, most of them with porches that served as front-row seats to life. Black families had lived on this side of town for generations. Elijah's grandma used to say that the roots here ran so deep, they held up the trees. By noon, the block would come alive. Kids dragging bikes with half-flat tires. Aunties in curlers leaning over porch railings with gossip and watermelon slices. Music spilling out of open windows, sometimes Marvin Gaye, sometimes trap. Elijah liked that Fair Hollow was loud. It was the kind of loud that felt like belonging. Behind him, the screen door creaked and slammed as his mom stepped out, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You haven't eaten," Tanya said, nudging him with her foot. "I'm not hungry yet." She peered down at the sketchbook. "That the same bird from yesterday?" "He's back." "Well, if he's smart, he'll stay away from them alley cats. Unlike you, he doesn't have a mama with chancletas to protect him." Elijah grinned. Tanya kissed his forehead and went back inside. From his porch, Elijah could see most of the block. Miss Clara 2 houses down, watering her garden in slippers, the Johnson twins setting up a sprinkler in their front yard. It was the kind of morning that made you believe the world was all right. Almost. Just past the corner, where the sidewalk curved into newer pavement, the houses started to change. The lawns were cleaner, hedges clipped too neatly. The porches were smaller, more decorative than used. Elijah rarely saw people sitting outside on that side. His father called it the quiet part of town. Tanya, ever the counselor, called it something else entirely, the invisible line. Elijah didn't fully understand the line, but he knew when he crossed it on his bike, people looked at him differently. He remembered once, last summer, riding to the gas station past Oak Ridge Lane. A white woman clutching her dog's leash had stepped a little too far off the sidewalk. No one said anything, but he noticed. This morning, something new broke the rhythm. A large moving truck rumbled up Oak Ridge and turned down their street, the sound grinding against the usual calm. Elijah squinted into the sun as the truck pulled into the driveway of the empty house next door, the one that had been vacant since Mr. Parker passed. 2 people jumped out, white, thin, maybe in their 30s. The woman wore a tank top that looked expensive even in the heat. The man had on sunglasses and a ball cap. Another figure, a boy about Elijah's age, popped out the back, dragging a skateboard. Elijah blinked and shaded his eyes. Nobody said anything, but he knew without needing to hear it, the Callahans had arrived. He turned a page in his sketchbook and began outlining the shape of the moving truck. His pencil paused mid-stroke when Miss Clara called out from her yard. "Well, look at that," she muttered loud enough for him to hear. "Guess we're getting new neighbors." Elijah glanced at her. "Yeah." She set her watering can down and leaned on her cane, eyes fixed on the newcomers. "I remember when this street had nothing but us folks. And then the taxes went up and the stories got quiet. You watch, baby. They always come with smiles first." Elijah didn't quite know what she meant, but the way she said it made the air feel heavier. Later that day, the Callahans didn't come over to say hello. No handshakes, no plates of welcome brownies. They unloaded box after box in silence, Greg giving quick instructions while Marcy wiped sweat from her brow and glared at a patch of dirt in the front yard like it had offended her. Elijah sat with his dad that evening, watching the fireflies blink in and out across the lawn. "They seem nice," Elijah offered, more question than statement. Malcolm puffed on his iced tea, eyes never leaving the house next door. Maybe, he said. Time always tells. As darkness fell, Elijah looked again at the sketchbook in his lap. He flipped to a fresh page, drew the outline of a house, and then, quietly, almost without thinking, added a thin crack along one of the windows. The next morning, the Callahans' front yard looked like a showroom. The old porch furniture had been replaced with sleek white wicker chairs and bright blue cushions. A geometric welcome mat sat at the door, and tall silver planters flanked the steps. Elijah noticed how clean everything was. Scrubbed. As if they'd moved in with the sole intent of erasing what came before. From his perch on the porch swing, Elijah watched them move about their yard like people posing for a commercial. Greg, the dad, wore a polo shirt and clean khaki shorts, even on a Saturday. His wife, Marcy, bent over a flower bed, gloves pristine. Their son, Connor, kicked a soccer ball around with slow, awkward control, as if still adjusting to the space. Elijah's mom had just refilled his lemonade and was chatting with Miss Clara across the fence when Marcy spotted them. "Hi there," she called, waving as she walked over. "We're the Callahans. Just moved in next door?" Tanya smiled warmly. "Welcome to Fair Hollow. I'm Tanya Bryant. This is my son Elijah." Marcy's eyes swept Elijah quickly, then returned to Tanya. "So nice to meet you. This neighborhood is so lively." "That's one way to put it," Tanya said, chuckling. "Lively keeps you young." Greg joined his wife at the fence, sunglasses still on. He nodded toward Malcolm's truck parked in the driveway. "Yours?" he asked. "Yep," Tanya replied. "My husband Malcolm's. He works out in Maple Ridge, runs his own garage." Greg's eyebrows rose, slightly too high. "That's great. A small business owner. Very entrepreneurial." Elijah noticed the shift in his mother's jaw, just for a second. Before she could respond, Connor appeared beside them, sweat dripping down his forehead. He looked at Elijah like he was trying to size up a stranger and a mirror at the same time. "You skate?" he asked abruptly. "Not really." Connor pointed at Elijah's sneakers. "You got Jordans, though." Elijah looked down at his shoes, confused. "Yeah. My mom won't let me wear expensive shoes till I get straight A's. Guess you're lucky." Marcy gave a little laugh and rested her hand on Connor's shoulder. "He's just joking. Boys, huh?" "Right," Tanya said, her voice smooth like cooling tea. "Well, if y'all need anything, we're right here." The Callahans said their goodbyes and walked back across their yard, already pulling out more decorations from a storage bin. Elijah didn't say anything, but his mom's face told him he wasn't the only one who'd heard the sharp edges under their words. Later that afternoon, he rode his bike up and down the block. The sun had begun to dip, turning the air gold. He passed by Miss Clara's house, slowing just enough to wave. She waved back with a faint smile. When he looped back toward his own yard, Elijah caught the end of a conversation from across the street, Mr. Lewis and another neighbor standing near their mailbox. "Just saying, you let one family move in and things start changing real fast," Mr. Lewis muttered. His companion nodded. "You can't stop progress, but you can slow it down. Gotta keep standards up, you know." They didn't see Elijah roll past, or maybe they didn't care. He felt the words settle behind his ears, bitter and sticky. That night, Elijah sat by his bedroom window, sketchbook open, staring at the Callahans' house. Their porch light glowed bright white, cutting sharply through the dusk. It looked sterile, unwelcoming, like it belonged to somewhere else entirely. He flipped to a fresh page and began to draw the outline of a bird again. This time a crow, wings partially spread, stuck in a narrow alley. Sunday morning brought heat early. At church, Pastor McCoy preached on Proverbs and perseverance. The choir swayed, tambourines rang, and Sister Geneva nearly fainted from the spirit. Elijah loved the music, the rhythm of it, the way his whole family seemed to move in harmony with the crowd. After service, the Bryants lingered outside under the shade of the big elm trees. "Your boy's grown taller again," Mr. Duncan said, patting Elijah on the shoulder. "You feeding him miracle water?" teased Ms. Hall. Tanya laughed, wrapping her arm around Elijah's shoulders. "Just love and chicken." As they walked home, the neighborhood was quiet again. Most families were inside cooking Sunday dinner or watching reruns of football games. When they passed the Callahan's house, Elijah noticed something pinned to the door, a crisp white flyer from the neighborhood association. His family hadn't received one. The next day, Tanya read it aloud over breakfast. Reminder: per noise policy, large gatherings must end by 9 p.m. Please be considerate of all residents. She raised an eyebrow. You think that's about the family reunion? Elijah asked, spearing a piece of sausage. We ended at 9, Tanya said. And they didn't send those out when the Thompsons had a graduation party that went till midnight. Malcolm took a sip of coffee. Sometimes the message ain't in the words. It's in who they send them to. Elijah chewed slowly, eyes drifting to the window. Outside, the bird was back, this time sitting on the power line, wings tucked tight, still as glass. By the time August rolled in, the sun had grown mean. The air clung to Elijah's skin like a second shirt. Even in the shade, the heat made everything feel slower, heavier. On the block, sprinkler arcs turned sidewalks into puddles, fans hummed in every window, and laughter rose lazily from front porches as people sought relief in cold sodas and stories. The Callahans, however, stayed mostly inside. Sometimes Elijah would see Connor skateboarding in the driveway, practicing kickflips and ollies with more frustration than success. Other times, Greg would water his grass shirtless, glancing around like a man constantly watching for something to correct. But they never joined the cookouts, never sat outside to talk. Their windows were closed, blinds drawn, even when the heat screamed. That weekend, the Callahans hosted a barbecue. Elijah had heard about it only in passing from his dad, who caught a glimpse of the party being set up as he came home from work. By sundown, their yard buzzed with laughter and the clink of glassware. A soft indie playlist played on Bluetooth speakers, low and calm. The smell of grilled chicken drifted over the fence, but the only guests were white. Elijah watched from the porch, chewing a toothpick. Connor hadn't invited him, even though they saw each other almost every day. Tanya came out with a glass of water and sat beside him. They didn't invite the block? She asked softly, already knowing the answer. Elijah shrugged. They don't have to, he said. No, Tanya replied. But it's loud, who people choose to share joy with. They sat together for a while, watching the lights flicker across the Callahans' back patio. Eventually, Elijah pulled out his sketchbook. He didn't draw the party. Instead, he sketched a bird again, wings spread this time, but its head turned sharply back, like it heard something behind it. On Monday, Tanya took Elijah to school to register for the new year. The halls of Fair Hollow Middle still smelled like waxed floors and faint bleach. Banners for the football team lined the walls. Elijah walked past them, feeling older than he had the year before, taller, quieter, more alert. At the main office, a woman behind the desk looked up and smiled tightly. Name, she asked. Elijah Bryant, Tanya said, placing her hand gently on Elijah's shoulder. The woman clicked away at her keyboard, then glanced at Tanya. Is he going to need academic support again this year? Tanya blinked. I'm sorry. Special assistance or tutoring? I'm just assuming based on last. Tanya's tone sharpened. He's in the gifted program. Math and science. The woman faltered, clearing her throat and double-checking the file. Oh, my mistake. Outside, Tanya's grip on the steering wheel was tight. Elijah sat in silence, trying to pretend he hadn't noticed. Back home, he flipped back through his sketches. He paused at one from a few days ago, Miss Clara's house, porch lights glowing like fireflies. Then, for the first time, he added smoke curling from the corner of the page. The broken bottle in Miss Clara's yard was gone, but the scorch mark in the soil remained, an ugly, blackened reminder. She still watered her garden every morning, but her hands moved slower now. She paused more often between tasks, as if waiting for something else to crack. No one was arrested. No cameras caught anything. The police never came back. By Friday, the Callahans had installed a Ring doorbell and 2 motion sensor lights. Elijah watched them blink all night long, slicing through the dark like searchlights. as if they were the ones who needed protection. That same afternoon, Connor stood by their shared fence line with 2 sodas and a cautious look. "I didn't know," he said, offering one to Elijah. Elijah didn't take it. "You live here now," he said quietly. "Knowing is part of the job." Connor looked down at his shoes. "My dad said it's not our fault people are mad. That we just bought a house." Elijah laughed bitterly. "Yeah? Your house didn't come with ghosts, huh? I'm not trying to hurt anybody. You don't have to try. All you have to do is stay quiet." Connor didn't have a reply. That night, Elijah drew again. No birds this time. Just rooftops. Row after row of them, some lit up, some dark, some cracked down the middle. One in the center glowed with a faint orange outline, as if smoldering from within. Sunday was the block party. The annual one, the real one. The one with ribs on grills and old men's spades talking like it was war. Kids darted between knees with sticky fingers. Speakers thumped soul and hip-hop while the sun bounced off foil trays full of macaroni and jerk chicken. Elijah wandered through it all, letting the noise wrap around him like armor. He felt safe here. Real. Rooted. But the Callahans weren't outside. Not at first. It was Marcy who came out first, wearing sunglasses even as the sun started to dip. She hovered on her porch like she was inspecting something distant and unfamiliar. Greg followed, drink in hand. Connor stood behind them, clearly unsure. They didn't join. They just watched. Until Miss Clara waved. It wasn't dramatic, just a brief lift of her hand, like brushing a fly. But it was enough. Marcy gave a polite nod. Greg raised his drink like a silent toast. Connor looked at Elijah, but said nothing. The line between the 2 houses stayed. Later, as the sky turned violet, the fireworks began. Not the official kind, just Roman candles and sparklers from a box Mr. Duncan kept in his garage for community morale. Elijah stood next to his dad as colors bloomed overhead. "They're not leaving," Elijah said, voice low. "No," Malcolm said. "They won't. Things are changing. Always do." Elijah's eyes reflected green and gold bursts in the sky. "Do you ever wish we could stop it?" Malcolm didn't answer at first. He reached into his pocket and handed Elijah something. A small, folded square of paper. Elijah opened it. It was one of his sketches, one he didn't remember giving away. The crow. The first one. "I found this on your desk," Malcolm said. "Thought maybe you forgot it meant something." Elijah stared at it. "It's flying." "Yeah," Malcolm said. "Even through the fire." School started the next week. On the first day, Elijah wore his new denim jacket and carried his sketchbook in his backpack, zipped in the same pocket as his pencils and one of his dad's cufflinks, just for luck. The hallways buzzed with noise, bodies shifting and flowing like a river. In homeroom, the teacher mispronounced his name. Elijah. He corrected her. She smiled awkwardly, then glanced at Connor sitting 1 row over. "And Connor?" "Connor," he said low. Elijah turned his head, met his eyes for a second. They didn't smile. They didn't nod. But they didn't look away. At lunch, Elijah sat with Maya, Tasha, and a few kids from the block. Their laughter filled the cafeteria air like brass instruments. That night, Elijah sat on the porch again. The bird wasn't there anymore, but he drew it anyway. This time he gave it a nest. Not in a tree, but on a roof, his roof. Strong lines, solid shading. Then he drew another bird beside it. Smaller. Wings folded. Looking up. The neighborhood was quiet again, but not peaceful. Not yet. Not fully. But Elijah had learned something from the cracks, the fire, the silence, the looks. Peace wasn't the same as comfort. It had to be made. Kept. Guarded. Like a home.